What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the FansToys Sever with the Gigapower Guttur, both versions of a G1 Snarl. So these both came out at different times. This specific version, this is called the HQ03X, which is a special weathered edition. It's got a lot of paint on it. The FansToys, this is the original version, came way back in 2014. This was issued. And then they did a repaint, which was the X version that was painted all the way through. It was basically this metallic paint. It looked more like this, but without the weathering. So with that being said, there's a little bit of an unfair comparison because this one is a special version, whereas this one is the standard version. I don't have the standard version, but we're still going to compare them, and we're going to try to be as fair as possible. When we get to paint, that's where things are going to be tough. But everything else being equal, this is the mold, this is the articulation, this is the alt mode. So all of that still stands. Second thing I want to say is I did a poll on my channel recently. I asked people if they wanted me to change up the format of my versus videos. And I was thinking about doing them in a way such that I don't really give my opinion and I just show you the figures straight, compare them, and at the end give you my opinion and not really score them. And I decided after looking at the results, there was nothing conclusive. It was about 42% said they like the new format. About 30-something% said they like the old format, and then another 20-something% said they don't care. So over 50% basically either like the old format or don't care. I decided I'm going to do it this way because I like doing it this way. I'm going to still score them in each category. That's my, these are my reviews, so I get to choose. And I think because there's no majority vote one way or another, I'm just going to do it my way. And if you like it, great. If you don't like these reviews, I understand. If you pick one or the other figure, you prefer that, and that's the way you go, then you win. And I really try to make these reviews for people who don't know which direction they want to go. So with all that being said, let's get started, and we're going to start off with the accessories. All right, here we have all the accessories. There's a little bit to talk about here because not all of these come with this figure, and so we're not going to count them, but I just want to show you. So this alternate face, which is much more cartoon accurate, comes with the FansToys Grinder, their version of Grimlock. So it is nice that they gave you this, but it didn't come with this figure, so we're not going to include this in the comparison. Also, these rear leg panels, and now this is actually the originals. I've already installed the new leg panels here, but these leg panels come with this little panel right here on the bottom that covers up in Dino mode. It covers over his abdomen, so we can't really include those extra pieces in this review because those came with the FansToys version of Sludge. So here's what you're left with once you get rid of everything that came with other figures. They both have the sword. They're painted on the hilt, just different paint. This one's painted with the silverish weathered paint, whereas we both have the translucent red, and they both light up. They both have the button there on the bottom. So the Gigapower one comes with a little hilt, and I think that's to mount it in one of the modes, but they're basically equivalent there. They both have a gun. The FansToys is painted with the red and the silver accents, whereas the Gigapower is fully painted in this weathered paint with the translucent on the front. They both light up. They both have buttons. So those are the same. They both come with an alternate red-eyed face. So the Gigapower gives you a whole new head, but it does have that red-eyed face for the toy-accurate look. And the FansToys has the face with the red piece there. So if you wanted to put that red piece on the original figure, you could put it in that head as well. But it really goes with this face, kind of the more snarling voice. They're both more snarling looking faces. And then you get the red eyes for the Dino mode. So we're going to call those even. And then what you're left with is these parts here. So you get the G1 toy Dino mode, this translucent plastic that goes over the top of the head. And then you get this shoulder-mounted cannon, which fits in the robot mode and also can attach to his legs in the Dino mode. So you get, and it's very well painted, by the way. So because you get those extra accessories for the Gigapower, we're going to give Gigapower the accessories. Next, we'll talk about the Sculpt, and to do that, we're going to put the G1 cartoon here so you can take a look and compare for yourself. And they both really look pretty cool. They're pretty close to the G1 cartoon. But the sculpt on the Gigapower, I mean, it's got so much going on, and you really have to get in close to look at it. But, you know, just looking across this figure, there is so many little details and little rivets and accents. You know, you got little details here, and then they've done this wash. You got that kind of dirty wash. And we'll talk more about that when the paint. But because of the paint, which is on top of the sculpting, there's lots of sculpting. Actually, look in here, which FansToys doesn't have that feature, by the way, but this opens up. There's tons of sculpted detail. Inside this panel here, you see tons of sculpted detail. You get all that detail in there. I mean, it just really looks impressive. There's a lot going on there. And, you know, that continues all the way throughout the figure, on the legs, on the bottom, on the back. I mean, still sculpted everywhere. The FansToys is also sculpted, but it's a little more subtle. There's a lot less features, and also because it's not painted, it's not accented as much. But there is less going on. I mean, there's a little bit more of a smoothness to it all the way around, especially on the back. There's a lot less going on. So there's a lot more sculpted detail, and then because of the paint, it's accentuated, and it really pops and it comes out. So I'm going to give Sculpt to Gigapower. All right, next we'll talk about the paint on these guys. And the paint is a little bit of an unfair competition because we're looking at the X version on the Gigapower. But with that being said, there is so much going on the paint here. There's so much detailing. There's washes. There's, you know, this dirt effect. There's this, you know, variations in the silver, variations in the chrome and the copper looking color. I mean, there's so much paint. Even the X version of the FansToys Sever, while it does look great and it's very shiny and nice, I don't think they hit the amount of detail and paint that Gigapower was able to do here. I think they really nailed paint. So I think it's unfair to compare to this guy. So even, you know, maybe I'll put a picture up here of the X version of Sever. And even comparing to that, I still think Gigapower nailed paint. So we're going to give paint to Gigapower. All right, next we're going to talk about the build on these figures. And build, you know, includes both hardware, but also just the general feel of the figures as you're handling them. When I handle this figure, it's just very solid. It never feels like it's going to break. Pretty much everything on it is well built. All the ratchets are solid. There's nothing that's really loose. And they still feel good to this day. You know, this is an older figure, and I've transformed it many times actually, and it still feels really solid, and it's overall well built. The hardware used is well done. This Gigapower one, you know, there are some ratchets that feel really good, especially like these arms. Those are pretty solid ratchets, and the legs, while the ratchet going this way does feel a little bit soft, this one is really strong, and it's actually stronger than this guy. So that's interesting that, you know, they have a mix of ratchets. But then there's some parts that don't feel as good. So coming back to the legs here, when we're talking about the foot here, these panels down here, they feel like they could easily break if you're not careful. They're just small plastic pieces. And then you try to get, here, let me get this open so you can see what I'm talking about. And when you get that open, you're supposed to pull out this little, you know, tab to go into his foot. And all of that doesn't feel so great, honestly, and this panel doesn't feel great either. And then to articulate, and we'll talk more about in articulation, but I do feel like that is going to damage over time. It doesn't feel very sturdy. And there are some things with the paint I'm concerned about, that potentially scratching it. This isn't my figure. This was sent to me, and the name was up front when we started the video. But I do have a little bit of concern, so I'm very careful because it's not my figure. So with that being said, I'm going to give build to FansToys. It just feels more solid, and it feels a little bit more well built and thought out, that it's going to last a little bit longer. Next, we're going to talk about the articulations. For articulation, we actually go through all the articulation on this guy. So the head is on a rotating swivel, so it gets up to there, down to there, and it rotates all the way around. The arms are on a ratchet that rotate all the way around, up to there, and then a rotation at the bicep, Single jointed elbow gets you 90 degrees. Rotation at the wrist, and then of course my favorite FansToys hands, favorite in the business. Individual articulated fingers with two pins in each finger, and then a ball jointed thumb. You can articulate these, so you have 2 points of articulation for these tails. You can articulate there, and then you can articulate there. So you can kind of get whatever angle you prefer for your figure. Continuing down, you have hip skirts all the way around. The leg rotates up to there, nice strong ratchet. Back to there, a nice strong ratchet, and then out to the side on a friction joint that does not hold. You can tighten this screw, but unfortunately no ratchet there, which is, I think, a mistake. You do get a 90-degree bend at the knee, up to there. You have an ankle tilt that gets you all the way out to there, and it's a nice solid die-cast piece. So really, really well balanced figure there. And then you do get a little bit of back and forward here. Oh, and you also get the thigh rotation. And, oh, forgot about the waist rotation as well. And it's ratcheted there. So moving over to the Gigapower, you do get the head on a rotation, but it doesn't go up and down. Much more limited head. That it really doesn't go up and down at all. And that's just the way they built the head. But it does rotate all the way around. Same ratchet on the arm, gets up to there, rotates all the way around. You can get these wings out of the way. So same thing, the inner joint moves here, and then the outer joint moves here, so you can get it just the same kind of movement, a little bit different. It doesn't have as much choice, but you can move it. You do get a rotation at the bicep, 90-degree bend at the elbow. These are soft ratchets. They don't feel good, but it works, and it gets you 90 degrees. You get a rotation at the wrist. Same thing on these hands. In fact, I would say these are on par, equal, or the same as FansToys. Two pinned joints, one at this here and one here. So you get same basically thing, and then a ball jointed thumb. Although the articulation is the same, I will say these hands don't feel as solid and that they're going to last as long as these. So that speaks to the build that I talked to earlier. Continuing downwards, you have a rotation at the waist, not ratcheted, just a regular friction joint. You can open up these. That's not really articulation, but I just want to show you that. You get 3 hip skirts on each side, 1 hip on each side. You can go on a soft ratchet this way, soft ratchet back, hard ratchet at the outside. Hold that leg. If I showed you that on the FansToys, it could not hold that leg, and there was no ratchet there. 90-degree bend at the knee gets you up to there. Rotation at the thigh. You do get an ankle tilt, but it's very tight, first of all, so it's really hard to get it to move. And it doesn't, it doesn't feel good. That's another thing about the build. When you're articulating things, when it doesn't feel good, that makes you worried about articulating. So because it's the way it's designed, it does, moves the front toe first, and then it moves this little piece, which in turn moves this back piece. So you kind of got to move them together, and it doesn't give you as much confidence as this foot. But you get the rotation, and no ankle tilt the other way. It's really kind of locked in place. You could sort of fake it, but you don't get that direction. So with that being shown, we can say FansToys probably has a little bit more articulation in the ankles, definitely more in the head because it's able to look up and down, a little bit more in the toes, and a little bit more on these wings. So we're going to give articulation to FansToys. All right, next we're going to talk about the engineering and transformation. So, the way I distinguish those two things, engineering is kind of the design and the features and that what we call masterpiece moment where you see that, the design is just something special. And then transformation is really about, how fun and or simple but yet challenging is the transformation. So for engineering, I think FansToys nailed the engineering because one of the things they were able to do is hide away the dino legs. And you see on the Gigapower, they've got them just sitting on the outside. you know, for the G1 toy, this is probably okay. But when you're trying to get something that looks more like the cartoon and it's supposed to be a masterpiece figure, you really want those to be hidden away. And they were able to figure out the engineering to get those to hide away. I'm really impressed by that. So I'm going to give engineering to FansToys. I think this is phenomenal, especially the legs. I think it was phenomenal. Really, really good design. Now, when it comes to transformation, I think there are some things on the Gigapower that are a little bit easier, a little bit more fun. It's much quicker to transform, and it's a little bit more intuitive. There are some things in the legs here that aren't as intuitive, and then especially on the back and this upper body portion, you have to get the sequence right or things start to collide. And that's some of the stuff you experience with FansToys. Now, this is one of the more simple figures for FansToys, so don't get me wrong, it's pretty easy and pretty fun, but when comparing these two, it's much more fun to transform the Gigapower. It just makes more sense. It's easier. You don't have to remember the exact sequence. And it just feels a little bit easier. So we're going to give transformation to Gigapower. And here we have them both in their Dino modes. And they are very different looking. Now, again, to be fair on this comparison, these aren't the right ones to compare. Probably should be comparing the X version or even the different painted version, right? Because this is a special version. But you take a look, you do see the proportions are pretty nice on both. Obviously, the Gigapower is bigger in the Dino mode. It was bigger in the robot mode as well, but bigger here too. So similar articulation on these two. Both really good Dino modes. It's very hard to say. I mean, they're just different looks, honestly. They both look really good. They both got lots of details. I love the chrome. There is a version of the Gigapower that's more chromed than this. You know, this is more like copper color, so I can't really fault them for that here. I do like the eyes on the FansToys over these because I prefer the metallic over the flat. And you can also change these out. I showed you earlier. You have the accessory to change out the blue eyes here with the red eyes if you wanted to. But for me, they're both really good in the Dino mode. I think they nail it. There isn't really anything on one or the other. Obviously, I do like the paint on the Gigapower, but like I said earlier, I would have to look at the FansToys X version to kind of consider that. So I'm going to give them a tie on the Dino mode. I think they both nailed it. They both look really good, and they both articulate, and they're both fun. So we'll give them a tie on the Alt mode. Last but not least, we're going to talk about the cost on these. And again, these vary widely depending on when you bought it, where you bought it. I'm going with a retail cost from an American retailer. I buy it from Toy Dojo, so I'm going off the Toy Dojo prices. This figure was $200 at retail. This figure was $240 at retail. You could probably find it for maybe a little bit less, but in general, this weathered version costs a little bit more than the FansToys version. So we're going to have cost of FansToys. Final thoughts on this comparison. You can see the score there and another tie. So I thought this was going to be FansToys, honestly, winning this. You know, I do prefer FansToys for the Dinobots. I just like the way they look. I like the style. But there's a lot to be said. There's a lot of good in these Gigapower. You know, and one thing I didn't actually talk about is the size. There they are with the Transform Element Optimus, and you can see that the color scheme and just the overall look of these, the FansToys fits in a lot better. But it all depends how you're planning to, if they're planning to display these separately on their own, then you're probably going to, prefer the Gigapower because of the, the large look, the dynamic paint, and just overall, the look of this set together. But if you're displaying them together, maybe on a G1 shelf, I think the FansToys just fits in a little bit nicer. But again, your preference, you kind of pick. Once again, I got a tie here, so it's very hard to say. You really have to pick based on your preferences. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.